In this video we'll be looking at the metal that we're going to use to texture, the hammers and the different punches. So we must first look at the metal we're going to use, and we're going to use copper, and we've cut it into little strips so that we can experiment with it. The reason we use copper is that it's quite inexpensive, and all the techniques that we use on the piece of copper, we can transfer those to certainly silver and gold. So it's a good metal to be practicing with. It's got a very high melting temperature, so when we start to heat it up, we're not going to worry about melting things. But in this case, we're going to use it to put texture. Experiment how we can put texture on a piece of metal. The first technique, it's quite a simple technique, and you will have seen it on pieces of jewellery, pendants and rings, and it's a hammered finish. And we've placed the copper strip onto our metal block, and we're using the polished hammer, so we get a nice polished dimple hammer mark. And just by holding it, and we don't need to hit very hard because copper is quite a soft metal, so we'll just hammer away, and we can build up little panels of texture. And because it's a polished hammer, you can see that the little hammer marks catch the light, because it gives a nice polished dimple mark. The next simple texturing technique is texturing with a hammerhead. You can buy specially made hammers that have got little texture on the hammer faces, but you could also go to a very cheap hammer and then file your own pattern into the head itself, because they're quite soft, really, some of the cheaper hammers. But once you've got your hammer texture on the head, then again using the metal plate, and you don't have to hammer really hard, it's just a good concentrated blow. And very quickly you can cover a lot of metal, and it gives you these sort of barked effect. Because it's not polished, it isn't as reflective as the doming hammer, but it gives a really good effect over a ring or a pendant. So this is a little jeweller's hammer, and it's been adapted a little bit, and what we've done, we've filed one of the heads to a sort of sharp chisel shaped point and polished it. So we've got a nice polished face, and again we're using it on the metal plate, and we're just going to go over building up the pattern. And quite quickly you can build up quite a good pattern, and you can see that because we've gone in different directions, the different facets of the hammer blows catch the light. And this is useful, a nice little texturing technique for using, like for earrings that are going to be moving all the time, so they catch the light. We're going to look at using punches. So with the punches you can get a more precise hammer mark or texture, because you can get the punch exactly where you want it to be. We're just going to use a jobbing hammer, which is like a sort of an ordinary hammer, but in jewellery trade we call them a jobbing hammer, and it's great for using on punches. Doesn't want to be too heavy but not too light. And a good tip is to tape down your piece of metal, because as you're using a punch in one hand and a hammer in the other, you can't control what the metal's doing. And we're going to look first at this chisel end punch, and it's, again, we've polished it up, but by resting your hand on the metal plate and sort of using it as a spring, and then using the hammer to give you nice repeat blows, we can work across the surface. And we can get it a little bit more precise, and we can go repeat pattern across along the edges, building up patterns around the piece of metal. And these could be rings or little earrings. In this technique, we're going to use letter punches, and letter punches come in various sizes, and these are sort of about 6mm letters, and these are 3mm letters. Mostly on punches, they all have either writing or the letter on one side of the punch. This helps so you can see what letter it is, but also if you have your thumb over the letter, whichever hand you're going to use, it's going to be the right way around. And it's quite infuriating when you get to the end of a long sentence, the last letter's upside down. So always try and get this, the punch in the right way around. I've taped down one of the little pieces of copper, and we're going to use the edge of the tape as a simple punch, a simple line to mark where our punch is going to go. And we can use the punch and just slide it down to the edge of the tape, and you can feel the edge, so you'll always get it in a straight line. And then instead of doing one big punch, which you might get perfectly right, do 3 or 4 normal size punches and sort of do north, east, south, west. And then you'd always get a full punch mark from the punch.